Welcome to this episode of the IBC Roundtable, where every Tuesday we're diving deep into your favorite subject, the infinite banking concept. This week, no difference. We're actually going to be uncovering ways that you can work with your CPA in a proactive manner.
Well, also ways that you can keep more money, right, Joe? Because isn't that a real concern that we have? I know it is for me.
No doubt.
I postpone paying the government as long as possible because this is the last day in the month of August, and I just filed my tax return.
Really?
Yeah. Now,
Good for you, by the way.
part of it was because one of the real estate investments I had, the K1 from it just came last week.
That's true.
But it's okay with me. Delay.
I mean, I think that this episode is so critical because people are thinking the same thing you and I have. What could I do proactively? Is there something else I should be doing? There's like this internal gut that says I'm missing out on something.
Well, I think we've hit enough times on this show as a whole, Joey. I remember the episode we did with David McKnight, and he had the video about, is the tax train coming? And there is this concern about what rates will be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. I mean, we're in an election year, and there's a lot of discussion, depending on which candidate gets elected, whether or not tax rates will stay low or whether they go significantly higher. And I think that's a big concern when you talked about proactive. Can we be proactive? Well, this episode is focused on, is there something we can be doing proactively?
Right. And how also to lean into your relationship with your CPA and how to also maybe take some advice outside of that from tax strategists and tax planning organizations.
Well, I love this episode. If you're not a member of our roundtable, our inner circle already, you need to be, because we actually go into a discussion after this episode in the live discussion with 3 CPAs discussing how IBC and taxes play together and some really neat tactical, practical tips that you can implement. So one last plug for us, Joey. Go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/inner circle. Make sure you get a part of that, and you can get that actual recording. But right now, let's belly up.
Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let these handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Now here are your hosts, Russ Morgan and Joey Murray.
I'm your host today, Russ, the idea guy Morgan. I am sitting around the table with the usual suspects, Mr. Downtown Ernie Brown, as well as Mark the Gooch, our resident pilot, and the man between two bamboos whose shirt tends to blend into his decor. And lastly, but not leastly, the man who wears a pink shirt on days I don't, the Italian stallion, Mr. Joey Murray. What's up, Joey?
I'm excited that we're talking about everybody's favorite 3-letter word, CPA, right? I mean, well,
not gonna lie, the first word that came to my mind was candy.
IBC, right? IBC and your CPA, your favorite
That's
2
right.
3-letter words.
Oh,
Okay.
so good. By the way, I guess that is 3 letters. It's an acronym.
It's
Does
not
that
a
count
word.
for that?
Okay, it's not a word. I get that.
Mark,
But-
what is your favorite 3-letter word?
Dog.
Cat.
Eat.
I like lamp.
But seriously, we have had this conversation more times with clients talking about infinite banking. In some cases, it's the fear of, what does my accountant think about this? Right? This concept is not something I've heard from them. So when I talk to them, what should I be telling them? How can they, how can I use this in such a way that they would be signing off on this? Maybe. There's also this idea of, what can I do that is within the tax code concerning my insurance policy and these loans against policies and so on. What are the thoughts you have from that, Ernie, that you hear constantly?
Well, I think the reverse of what you said, how can I get my CPA to sign off on this, is I think sometimes there's a hesitation or pushback from some of our clients who have gone to their CPAs, and the CPA says, I don't really know about that. I don't think that's a great idea.
That's true. What about you, Mark? What do you hear from people?
Similar to what Ernie said. I mean, I'll speak specifically to myself. It was a learning journey for myself and my CPA that we both had to go through, because I don't speak CPA.
Mm.
It's not my language.
What does a CPA speak like, by the way?
Not me.
I mean, is it close to Randy Watson?
Randy Watson, please, no, do not go there.
Okay. All right.
Not again.
Not again. All right. Well, here's the thing that I think the point of today's subject matter that we know is that we want to keep more of the money. I received a text just seconds ago. My wife said, "Did you take my $50?" And I responded back with like a Michael Scott from The Office, like, "What? Me? No, what do you mean?" We want to keep more of our money, don't we? And I think today's subject matter is super important as it relates to IBC, because there are features within life insurance policies that keep our insurance policies growing without taxes. And there's actually provisions that exist out there that allows us to access the money without taxes. But I think all of that comes in light of, are we really in control of taxes? And I want to break that out today, because I think, Ernie, there's a lot of talk about this election, right? This is a big election year. There's a lot of taxes that are potentially subject to change if we change off. If the president no longer is reelected, and we have a new incoming group that has already identified that there's areas in the tax code that they want to adjust, and maybe, and for some people, adjust upwards. So what is it that you think that would help people understand more about today's subject matter as to how important maybe that election stuff is to taxes as it relates to IBC?
Well, that's a big question.
I talked for a long time.
There's a lot of words there.
There were. Well, what are we doing? We're wanting to use IBC to control our money. So should we have a plan for our taxes, and how can we best know how to use IBC as it relates to having a plan for taxes? So that's why we're having this conversation with a few CPAs, right? We've invited some of our clients who practice IBC, who are CPAs, to be around our table with us so that we can talk to them as it relates to taxes and IBC.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like, having done infinite banking over the last over a decade now, my mindset about taxes has changed.
How so?
Well, I think, I remember early on feeling like, there's something not quite right about taxes, but what can I do about it?
I can think of a lot of things not right with taxes.
But I'm saying, like, I just remember that thought process of feeling like a little bit helpless about it. Like, what can I do personally? I feel like I'm doing the best I can, but I know there's something I'm missing, right? How can I take control of that? And I think now IBC has kind of put me in the mindset of taking control.
Well, so Mark, we talk about the Wall Street mindset and how we are, if we are not taking a proactive approach with our finances, we are subject to the whims of the market and everything else. Do you feel like that's the way most people walk around today as it relates to taxes?
Yeah, I think a lot of people just kind of view that as, well, I don't really understand it. I don't know. I just kind of have to deal with whatever's thrown at me. Whereas what I really appreciate about, even going down this road just as an educational piece, is seeing that there are other ways to solve that same problem. I actually just thought of this one now, is depending on what your income bracket is, you get topped out if you use a quote traditional plan. there's only so much money that the government will let you defer taxes on. And so after that point, oh, okay, well, I guess I just have to keep paying taxes on all of my money because that's the only option I have. But if we can look at a different angle, which is what we're going to get into today, now all of a sudden there is no cap on what you can shelter, what the amount of your resources you can divert into a system that you then have, like we've all been hitting on here, is control over.
Well, it is. We have to take control, and that, roughly there's 7 to 10 pages in the IRS code that define what is income, and there's then 9,990 pages or some odd that tell you what are the exceptions to those things. And one of the ones you just hit on is in one of those exceptions, section 401k is one way in which they allow employees to put money away without paying tax today and deferring it to a future date. And we've gone in this conversation before. We said not only do they defer the taxes, but they also defer something even more important, Ernie, the tax rate, the tax calculation. And that's a big concern. And that really, as we go into who wants to be in control, I don't think any of us want to defer a big, large sum of money into the future without any control as to what rate we will get to keep and what rate the government will take from us. I mean, just like my wife, call me right now. Where's that $50 at, right? I mean, and I've got that $50 in my wallet right now, Megan, and she can't access it, and she wants it. Well, I feel like maybe I'm the 401k at this point, and I'm going to tell her how much of that she's going to get back. And that's a little bit like what happens. And I don't like being on that side. And here's another thing. If we're going to pick some battles here, I want to start on this one. When we talk about the IRS or the government, lots of times we like to personify that group with this funny, whimsical character with a top hat wearing a red, white, and blue suit. And we call that person what?
Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam. Now, I didn't have an Uncle Sam, but I had an Uncle Kenny. Uncle Kenny would give me green Tic Tacs every time I saw him, and he would call them Hulk pills. And you can only imagine my little extroverted ego out there just like taking Hulk pills and running around, like a 2-iron, as if I was big and green like the Hulk and strong and could lift, anything you wanted. I loved Uncle Kenny. I mean, he would tell us ghost stories when we'd be out at my grandparents' house, way out in the woods, and then, give us a nickel if we would run out to the barn and touch the wall and run back. It's somebody I have fond memories of. I have 7, or how many nieces? I have nieces and nephews. I have 14, 19 nieces and nephews. I mean, it requires a lot for me to keep up with that. I want to be a fun uncle. But is our Uncle Sam, is that how we should correctly classify the government, as our Uncle Sam?
I think that's really like an attempt. I mean, it's all marketing, right?
It is marketing.
I mean, it's the messaging that makes you, well, I mean, I don't want to take money from Uncle Sam. I mean, well, it's his money. I should just
I
want
to help out Uncle Sam. Ernie, you did some research on Uncle Sam.
I did some quick research. That's right.
Okay. Well, share. Drop some knowledge with us.
Well, there's no exact certainty on when he originated, but there was this guy who served food in the army around the War of 1812, and there's claim that he is the one who, his initials were U.S.
Okay.
And so when he'd give his food out, his initials would be on those materials, and so from there, U.S. Uncle Sam came. Now, that's not where they claim him, but that is, I think, a positive image of the origination of Uncle Sam.
Right. And that would be an image as a marketer. You'd want to personify someone in that regard. But taxes, as we know it, started in 1913, right? So it came a little after that.
About 100 years.
And thank you. And marketing is definitely to paint our patriotic duty, Mark, is to pay as much in taxes as you possibly can. That's what you want to do, isn't it?
Oh yeah, wholeheartedly. I'm cutting checks every day, every last penny.
Well, I think you think back to the previous election when Donald Trump was running against Hillary, right? And there was a point in one of the debates, you guys can go out and Google this video, where Hillary was going after Donald Trump to just talk about the fact that, one, he doesn't disclose his taxes, but secondly, the last time he had to disclose them when he was trying to get a permit for a casino, it showed he had paid zero in federal taxes. And she's like, that means he didn't pay for roads, he didn't pay for kids, he didn't pay for, lost Johnnies, whatever it is. And he chimes in the middle of this, if you remember, and he says, that makes me smart. And one of the things I think is overlooked in this is that we can be smart. We can participate in an active role, not in a reactive role as it relates to taxes. And IBC, putting money in our life insurance policies, is granted some provisions to prevent it from being taxed. What are some of those provisions, Joey?
Well, I mean, it's going to grow in a tax deferred manner and then be available to you in a tax free manner.
How do we know that?
Because of the IRS code.
Which specific code?
The 7702, IRC 7702.
Okay, because I think sometimes people they hear people say that, and you sell life insurance, so we're not going to believe anything you're saying. This is a little Megan Trainor here. Your lips are moving because you lie. But you can type it in Google right now, IRC 7702. Go to sleep minutes later after reading it. But know that there are guidelines and provisions right there that tell us why life insurance can be not subject to taxation. Not only not subject to it when it's growing, when you access it, but also when you die.
Yeah, when you pass it on. It's one of the best possible estate planning tools that there is.
So let's talk a little bit, though, if we want to keep more of our money, what is going to prevent us from doing that?
I think we have something in the future that threatens us keeping our money. Something coming due.
What would that be?
Oh, we don't know exactly what it will be, but no doubt our federal deficit, our debt, is going to be a problem.
Mark, are you concerned at all with the amount of money that's been printed this year and Corona stimulus to add to our deficit, is how that might affect money in the future and its taxes?
Oh no, because they say it's free money. It's gonna be okay. Of course I am. Since last night, I've had the U.S. debt clock up on my computer. Which, if you ever want to have nightmares, just go ahead and put that puppy on as a screensaver. $2 billion since last night, and it hasn't even been 24 hours, has been added to our U.S. national debt.
Wow.
$2 billion.
In less than 24 hours.
Thing is spinning.
That is so crazy. I mean, it's like the power meter at my house just right now. Just
So what's it sitting at right now, Mark?
26 trillion 608 billion 903,208 400. Well,
I get the point.
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, but that's something that if we are not looking at that, we're just being passive. We put our head down. We say, we're just going to go to work. We're just going to do what we're told. And we're going to defer taxes to the future because that's a good strategy. We pull our head up in 20 years, 30 years, and we decide to go to the account. We go to the counter where our $50 was, and it's no longer there. And someone else is going to tell us how much of that we're going to get back, and it's going to be due to, you know what? We needed more groceries. Right? We needed other things. And so those things cost money. And as we all know, things get more expensive each and every year, doesn't it? And when we are now putting our good, hard worked money into an account that someone else is expenses that have been on the rise significantly for years, they're going to need more of that cash. And I think that as a as a dad, as someone who's working hard to try to find ways to create financial freedom, this concerns me. And I want to know, like, can I participate? Can I be active in this?
Well, I want to challenge you as you're listening to this to maybe you were like what I said I was over 10 years ago, wondering, is there something I can do, but kind of almost giving up, kind of feeling like it's just going to happen to me regardless. I want to challenge you to start saying, what can I do? And what am I lacking knowledge wise to get there? Like that is part of what we talk about on the show all the time is taking control. Part of that is educating yourself. Even right now, when we're going to go deep into this with our CPAs on the hot seat here in the inner circle in just a few minutes, that is a step that you can actively take to start putting this knowledge in play and taking over control. And I don't know if this is necessarily the right time to say it, but I remember distinctly when I started my first policy with you, Russ, and about 6 months in, we had maybe talked about this up front, but I didn't really pay that much attention. But I realized, wait a minute, I just got like $20,000 in a tax refund. I remember early on, I was like,
You're
high-fiving you. Like,
not me. You were celebrating that.
Uncle Sam gave you a gift.
I was excited. I was
That's
like,
when you liked Uncle Sam. You're like, Uncle Sam, yeah.
man, it's
Bring
like
it.
forced savings. I mean, these are the things that I was hearing and I was just regurgitating, right? Yeah, I got this money back. But something I knew was not quite right about that. And when I started learning about IBC, of course, guess where my second policy started to come from? And I was like, hey, Russ, what can I do to make sure that I get this money during the year instead of deferring it for a year, a tax or an interest-free loan to the government, and go ahead and get it into a policy? And so we worked on some withholding stuff with the accountants, and I was able to start getting that money monthly and not passing it on as an interest-free.
Well, think about that. I mean, sometimes, right, we are so nervous about having interest or penalties or something like that if I don't pay enough, because that can happen. And our CPAs today we're glad to ask them the exact way that works. But there can be a penalty if we don't pay in enough. But if or when, in your situation, Joey, that you paid in too much, did they pay you a penalty for you overpaying them? And they're like, oh, by the way, we kept too much of your money, so here's your penalty and interest back.
Well, I just assume I missed the letter, is lost in the mail or something like that. I'm still waiting on it. 10 years later, but
those tax dollars delivered well then, right?
that's right.
But think about that. That is a concern that most people forget. They say they're so concerned to pay in a penalty, but you never consider what is the penalty of overpayment, right? The opportunity cost on our money, because this is why we're listening to this. This whole podcast is a movement to help you create financial freedom, more income than you have monthly expenses from things that you don't have to actively go to work for. Well, we've got to find ways to cut monthly expenses. And one of the ones that I love cutting, if I'm going to cut a monthly expense, is taxes. I'm going to shave that thing down. If you're talking about being frugal, there's one thing I want to get, tiny house on, and that's my tax bill, right? There's not a whole lot of other things I want to cut out of my life, but tax bill is one of them.
It's found money.
And through strategies that some of our CPAs that are part of our discussion that we're about to jump in with, if you're not a member of the Inner Circle, I'm going to encourage you to join. You can go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/inner circle, and you can listen to the rest of this discussion we're getting ready to have. But through strategies that these CPAs and tax attorneys have provided to one of our clients, guy makes a little over $3 million, right? Not your average ordinary person, but somebody I'm going to highlight because I just heard his story earlier this week, and I was just so pumped because this is an example of taking active strategy, not being reactive, but being proactive. Well, through strategies, they were able to not only get back all the money he paid in taxes, but get back even more than that because he had spent about $1 million last year developing an app that he could use to help grow his business as well as help other people's businesses. And right now, the government they're eager to get more people in America to start creating things instead of outsourcing it to China, especially, that they're giving tax credit, big time tax credits for this kind of stuff. And so he'd spent $1 million building out this app, and he got some crazy, I think it netted about $150,000 in his pocket. So at his tax rate, I don't know what that is, $300,000, $400,000 tax credit. It's amazing. Like, I'm just so pumped for him. But it goes back to before him working with some of these CPAs and these tax attorneys, he was paying out $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a year in taxes and just thinking that's what I do. But then he got proactive and started, well, what can I do? Can I be engaged and involved in this? No different than IBC. This is how we get to financial freedom, is we get proactive. And I want to leave it there as we wrap up. We're gonna head into the inner circle. We're going to start asking questions of our CPAs. We're going to get free advice from these guys. Like, these guys always charge the crap out of me. So today, get some of that money back. No, I'm kidding. These guys are amazing. I'm so thankful to have them. But seriously, it's free advice day. Thank you for joining us on this podcast. Come back next week. We're going to have another amazing podcast for you as we sit at the round table. But if you're not in the inner circle, here's your chance. wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/inner circle.
This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your own terms in places you understand, so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.